Hello, and welcome to Part 3 of a three-part series overviewing the Public Education and Recreation Levy, which will be voted on by Saydel residents on September 13th. In Part 1, we learned what PERL is. In Part 2, we discussed the intended uses of PERL in Saydel within the legal requirements of the PERL levy. And in Part 3, we'll talk about the tax impact should PERL pass. Welcome to Part 3. Prior to discussing the individual impact of PERL, it's important to understand the overall picture of school taxes. Within the school tax, there are several levies. Each of these levies has an intended purpose. Some are formula-driven, some are within the board's discretion, and some require voter approval. If approved, PERL would be included in this list of levies and happens to be a levy that requires voter approval. Let's look at each individual levy one by one with its intended purpose. The first levy is the general fund levy. The state legislature sets the requirement for the amount of money that can be spent per pupil in every school district in Iowa. Each school district has to contribute a certain amount to this level. Because of our tax base here in Saydel, we have a very low tax rate for the general fund levy, which keeps the overall tax rate low. This is entirely formula driven. The next levy is the cash reserve levy. This levy is intended to support programs that are not fully funded by the state. We cannot levy this tax until we meet a set formula. However, after that formula is met, the board can set the rate as it sees fit. The next levy is the instructional support levy. This is approved by the board every 5 years and is set by a yearly formula. The management levy is intended to provide insurance needs to the district outside of employee health insurance. Employee health insurance is covered by the general fund levy. The next two levies are the physical plant and equipment levies. These levies are intended to provide building maintenance as well as major equipment and technology purposes. These are set at a specific limit. The voter-approved levy, last approved in 2015, is set at a maximum of $1.34 per $1,000. The board-approved PEPL is set at a maximum of 33 cents per $1,000. The next levy is the debt service levy. This is the levy that is used to pay off general obligation bonds that have been voted on by the public. So these bonds are voted on by the public, and then after that, the level of the levy is set by the board. Again, just like these levies, PERL has a maximum set for the amount that can be levied, which is 13.5 cents per $1,000. This is a 5-year trend of total tax levy rate for Saydel Community School District. This chart also includes an average of the 5 bordering districts in the same year. There is generally a $5.50 difference between Saydel's tax rate and the next lowest tax rate of the 5 bordering districts. Quick review of where revenues come from. In Saydel, we have a large commercial and industrial tax base. This is where most of our revenues come from. But this chart also illustrates the other sources of revenue by class. Another important understanding in calculating the impact of PERL is the rollback. Rollback is a property tax relief mechanism. This means you do not pay taxes on your full assessed value. You pay on the percent of the rollback. This chart indicates the class and the rollback rates, what they were in 2015-16 and what they are in 2016-17 school years. As you can see, in residential, residents only pay 55.63% of their total assessed value in taxes. For commercial, they pay 90%. I want to provide a formula to calculate PERL and their impact on individuals. The first step is to determine your taxable valuation. You can find your taxable valuation on the county assessor's website. Once you find this, you need to multiply it by the rollback percent from the previous page. And if you've applied for homestead credit, you subtract that homestead credit. This equals your final taxable valuation, or the amount that you are taxed on that year. So for example, let's assume a $100,000 property value for both a residential and a commercial property. We would take $100,000 for a residential property times 0.5573, which is the rollback, and subtract the homestead credit, which is set each year. That would equal $50,880 that you would be taxed on. For commercial, you take out the homestead credit. You take $100,000 of property value and you multiply it by 90% or 0.90, and commercial properties are taxed on $90,000 of that $100,000. Step 2 is to take that understanding of what you're taxed on, and there are two options for calculating the impact of PERL. Let me start with step 1. You would take your final taxable valuation from step 1 times 0.000135, or 13.5 cents per $1,000. That would equal your total potential PERL impact. So our two examples using our $100,000 property value example. Residential, we calculated after rollback and homestead that resident would be taxed on $50,880. We would take $50,880 times 0.000135, which would equal about $6.87 that they would be taxed on that $100,000 of property value. For commercial, we use the 90%, again $90,000 times 0.000135, which equals $12.15 per $100,000 of property. Or you could take the final taxable valuation and divide it by 1,000. Again, this tax is 13.5 cents per $1,000 times 0.135, and that would equal the total potential PERL impact. You'll arrive at the same numbers. For residential, you'd take 50,880 divided by 1,000 times 0.135, which would equal $6.87. For commercial, you take 90,000 divided by 1,000 times 0.135, and you'll arrive at $12.15. In part 1, we discussed what PERL is. In part 2, we discussed PERL's intended uses. Again, this three-part series was intended to inform the public, not to advocate for or against PERL. It was also designed in mind with the questions that the district office has received and school board members have received regarding the PERL tax. We hope that this has been helpful. You can always access more information on the Saydel website. There's a special link on the Saydel website, which will take you to voter information, including frequently asked questions and a survey of public need. You can also follow the district on Facebook, and you can always call the Saydel District Office at 264-0866 or send an email to pearlquestions@saydel.net. Thank you for your time and consideration in listening to these three parts. Please contact with any additional questions.